Hi, I'm Flip Padot. Welcome to Old Bull's second installment of Quarantine Roundtable, helping you to trade your way through the apocalypse on the political prediction markets. Our esteemed panelists are patiently waiting for us in the Zoom waiting room, where they're apparently exposed to all kinds of data privacy vulnerabilities, so let's get right to it. Let's shoot the bull. Well, here we remain, folks. Our national quarantine continues, and we are back with Quarantine Roundtable II, along with our esteemed panel to bring you the latest action from the political prediction markets, which are tracking how this whole ungodly situation is impacting the 2020 election season, among other things. So let's introduce you to a couple of our panelists right now. We have Derek Phillips, who, if you want to follow on Twitter, by the way, is at DMP from PI. Derek, how are you?
Doing well, thanks.
And Jason Pipkin, who is at Jipkin, Jipkin on Twitter. Jason, how you doing?
Doing all right.
And Jason is dressed for the occasion, as you can see, in his bright blue Predicted t-shirt. Well done.
Yeah. Thank you.
We may have a couple more panelists joining us as we roll along here today. We'll see if so. You may just see them pop in unannounced. It's all part of the excitement and mystery of life in lockdown USA. But in the meantime, let's get going with the panelists that we have here at the moment. I'm just going to bring up a couple of topics I wanted to ask you guys about today. We did this, both of you joined us in our first roundtable about a week ago. And since then, we've actually had a number of new markets pop up on Predicted, some of which people have been really clamoring for. And so there's some interesting new ways to play this whole situation. One of them is, will the Democratic convention go ahead as planned? And this one is not only an interesting question, it's seen some really interesting price action. I don't know if this is one that you guys have been following, but Biden, of course, recently, when asked about it in one of his bunker videos, said he didn't think it seemed likely that it would go ahead. But I'm going to try and bring up the price chart here so folks can see what we're talking about. Here it is. And that's not the right market, but let me get to the right one. Here it is. It's showing the last price is 64 cents or 64% that it will go ahead. But again, this market has been live for just a day about 24 and a half hours. And you can see in this hourly chart that had been trading, in the 30s basically until a couple hours ago, and spiked to 75 and is now at 64. So this suggests that the convention is more likely than not to go ahead as planned. So you guys, my question to you is, does this make any sense? Why is it spiking? And is it possible that Uncle Joe does not have his finger on the pulse of the party?
Well, there's actually two markets involving this question. The other one you can see right there is, does the Dem nominee accept by July 16th? And that one has fallen into free fall. It's at 4 cents now. The most recent news is that they are still planning on having the convention in Milwaukee, but in August rather than July. So if you think, that the latest plan is going to go ahead, then yeah, this is a yes. But there's still a lot of uncertainty that it might go virtual or that it might be canceled or moved to another venue. And that's why it's still only at 62.
Yeah, exactly. So yesterday, when he said it might not happen, things fell because the assumption was that he was saying it was going to be canceled or moved virtually or something like that. And then today it's just been postponed to August. So it recovered this location market.
So what do you guys think of this price? Are you in this market? And if you were to be, which side would you take? 60 cents, 62 cents, yes, or 38 cents or so for no?
Well, I think they had some issues with the convention center in yesterday's news. Having to do with the NBA, I'm not exactly sure what the controversy was, but I think if it's moved back to August, that controversy is not there anymore, and they'll be able to hold it as planned. So it's really just a bet on whether the country will be opened by August. And I think it's probably a pretty good bet at 60-something cents. I think Trump's eager to restart his rallies, and once he starts his rallies, Democrats are going to have free reign to do whatever they want to do.
Right.
So I think that's probably a good buy. Yes.
So in that sense too, and barring additional news from the DNC or from Biden himself, this market might actually serve as something of a proxy in terms of when the country reopens. If they're targeting an August date, then it says 2/3 that's plausible.
Right.
If that starts to go down, or if things worsen in terms of the overall virus environment, you might expect that to go lower,
right,
and vice versa.
So there are some other things. There are second wave possibilities. So in principle, if we were to start slowly reopening in July, maybe a second wave is starting to come on in August, and that would force.
And you might see that in the price.
You can't have large gatherings. Maybe it wouldn't be completely closed, but you couldn't have large gatherings. So there could be drama later in the summer, but for now it feels like a yes.
Yeah, and I guess this still leaves open the possibility that it continues, but it's not the typical 50,000 people crammed into a convention center.
Right.
Wouldn't be required for this to resolve. Yeah, so it doesn't necessarily mean that all concerns are gone and they're enabling stadium level events, but that things are calmed down enough for them to carry on the business of the convention itself. So another category that I wanted to get to, which is it's been up on the board already, but they've added a few just in recent days, are the state by state presidential party winner markets. As the whole virus situation and the Trump administration's response to it, Biden's response to it have unfolded, there's been a lot of chatter and articles written about the way that the virus and the responses may be changing the national electoral map. So again, I want to open this up, and this is not just one market, but a whole bunch of markets. And you'll see here, this is just a search on the phrase "which party will win," which is how they phrase the state by state market. So it picks up a few others here, Senate races and the presidency and things like this. But you can see there are already a number of interesting states to play here. Now, not all of them are swing states explicitly, but most of them are trading, as less of a lock than say 90-10 markets. You see Texas here at 71, Minnesota 75, New Hampshire 64. So these are kind of the leaners to strong leaners, but which seem to suggest, at least to me, that a map that normally is pretty small of truly contestable states, these prices seemed farther away from 90-10 than I would have expected. Is this a market group that you guys have been watching? And if so, what's the price action been like as this has unfolded and all the certainty around it has increased?
I think all of these states are kind of tied to Trump approval at the moment, and just general how things are going in the country. So I mean, if it seems like Trump has a handle on the situation, and if the worst case scenarios are averted, you're going to see some movement in his direction in all of these states. And the reverse is true as well. If he doesn't do so well, if his approval starts to lag, then you're going to see 5-10 cents movement in the opposite direction.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, some of those are kind of off. Ohio, I think, is off. A lot of them, even like the 90-10s, should probably be 98-2s in a lot of cases.
Ohio said it's off. That's trading at 63% for Trump. Where do you think this ought to be?
I think that's probably at least a 75-25 Trump state. But I don't know. It's been as high as high 70s, I think, and as low as 55 or so.
Here. Yeah, just even inside of the last month, it's been mid 70s. Looks like it peaked. Right around 80.
Whew. How about that?
So it's pulled back. So this is probably not that unusual a chart if you were to look at all the others in terms of the ones that were not locks but strong leaners having considerably narrowed. Again, you look at states like Texas, Virginia, the places where you might expect.
I think all of them are kind of trending toward the middle. I mean, even on the other side, you've got states like New Hampshire and Minnesota. Mm-hmm. I think it's just because we're so far out and there's so much uncertainty. I mean, either Trump or Biden, could get sick, and that's just going to throw all of these markets into disarray. So I think people are just resistant to putting money on long positions. And on the other side, people are hoping that something really unexpected is going to happen and buying the cheaper prices. So I think that dynamic's going to continue at least for a couple more weeks. Of just both sides pushing to the middle. And, that might be a good buy opportunity if the price of Minnesota goes down, or if the price of Texas goes down,
Right.
or Ohio, to get the favorite in either of those states.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, so much of these the odds on these markets now are tied to that Trump approval. So if traders they're looking to play the swings in these markets, is that what you advise them to look at as kind of the daily moves in that nationwide Trump approval, or at least is that a better barometer for these than say the Trump versus Biden approval spread or head-to-head national polling matchups?
Well, I think the head-to-head polling is probably a better metric. I mean, obviously, it's a direct question rather than trying to extrapolate the data from the approval question, because what we've seen pretty much consistently throughout polling is that Trump's approval is higher than the number of people who are willing to support him. So he may come in with
Right.
an approval number at 48 or 49, but he's still only getting 44 or 45% of the vote.
Yeah. It goes back to an interesting dynamic with Trump. I mean, so many people have made up their minds about him, obviously, one way or another, that maybe the rally around the flag effect is real and that people are willing to say, hey, yeah, tentative sort of tempered thumbs up, but I'm still not going to vote for you. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that, that voted for Trump just to kind of throw a bomb into the system.
Right.
Wanted to burn down DC, and they approve of him, because he's doing what they voted him in to accomplish. But they just don't want another 4 years of all the headaches and all the drama.
Sure.
So I think that number is pretty accurate. The discrepancy between the approval number and the head-to-head numbers, I think is something that a lot of the media outlets haven't really picked up on yet. But it's going to be driving the narrative, I think, as we get closer to the election.
Yeah, and especially as you now have basically a one narrative news cycle
Right.
indefinitely. It's still 7 months till election day. A lot could change, but the story isn't going to go away tomorrow, obviously. So assuming it's still a really big lever nationwide, and assuming many of these states are very highly correlated in terms of which way they go, does Trump really perform well, outperform, and bring over enough people for a 40-state victory? Or does he, foul something up and things get much worse and he takes a lot of blame and suddenly loses, all of the swing states en masse? So I wonder if, given the unusual pricing we're seeing on all these state by state markets, if one way to play it would be to simply, fade all of the heavy favorites either way on the assumption that things are going to swing, or there's a good chance things swing one direction or another. And he picks up a lot of states that he shouldn't have otherwise gotten and keeps all of his core states. Or the opposite happens, and he loses not only all the swing states, but a few that he should have. So in other words, if you're playing kind of both sides of that, in other words, you gain as long as something extreme happens in terms of his nationwide approval, and that leads to a washout one way or another. I mean, might be one strategy to play the idea that the virus and the response to it and people's impressions of Trump's handling of it will guide a huge amount of votes. Maybe that's not the electoral dynamic, but if that's your thesis, maybe that's one way to play it.
All of these markets are going to move a lot, especially the ones that are considered swing or contested, anything between 75 and 25. They're all going to see at least 10-cent movements one way or the other, probably several times over the course of the summer. So you could probably just buy something, set a sell for it 10 cents higher,
yeah.
and check back in a month, and maybe you'll probably make money. So you even just throwing darts probably do all right.
Yeah, those longer term markets. I mean, there's some good swings in those, but like, for instance, the 538 that ends at the end of May, they just launched it a couple of days ago. What you're betting on there is you're betting on whether Trump's peak approval is already hit, or whether this rally around the flag effect is gonna recede. And I think those are a lot more interesting. This kind of weekly and monthly stuff is a lot more interesting than trying to figure out, whether people are going to think that Trump has a better chance of winning, Ohio than he actually does.
Yeah.
Or Biden, I guess, in the Ohio example. But yeah, I think a lot of the long-term investors should look to that as a sort of guidance too. Because if he does do poorly in that 538 market, those state markets are probably going to suffer as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So as you mentioned, these are a little bit longer term markets that you can jump in and out of as frequently as you like, but ultimately they won't resolve for another, better than half a year.
Right.
But looking at the other extreme, and one of the newer and very short-term markets is on whether Wisconsin will postpone their primary. Now, this is scheduled for Tuesday, just 5 days from now. And I want to share the pricing on that because it's pretty surprising, or it was to me anyway. That shows a good chance that they will not. Will they postpone it? 36 cents. So the market is saying no, they're much more likely to keep it where it is. I'm curious what you both think about this. I mean, is it really realistic that they can go ahead with it as planned, particularly as it seems, at least kind of anecdotally, if not empirically, that Michigan may have exacerbated its own viral spread problems by going ahead with its primary when states like nearby states like Ohio were postponing it. I mean, can the state really move ahead with the primary as planned in just 5 days? What do you think?
They can. They shouldn't, but they can. I've vaguely been following this. I was trading it yesterday. The governor doesn't seem inclined to move it. It's not clear that he would have the power to do that unilaterally. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. The legislature, which is Republican controlled, they don't want to move it either. They think that lower turnout will be helpful for them for the Supreme Court seat, the state Supreme Court seat that's on the ballot and very important. There's a few cases that sort of got merged into a federal court case seeking an injunction to either, some people wanted an extension of the absentee ballot filing deadlines, others wanted the election moved altogether or to cancel in person. There's all sorts of different ideas out there. I listened to there's a conference call you could join in and listen to the proceedings yesterday, and the judge didn't seem like he wanted to actually postpone the election. It seemed like he didn't think it should happen, but he felt like it wasn't in his powers to assert that it couldn't happen. Felt like it was the job of the legislature or the executive. So that's sort of what the pricing reflects, that this judge is probably going to say, okay, any ballots postmarked by April 7th are now okay, or any ballots postmarked by some other date are now okay. But it seems to me like the election would still go ahead. The in-person, however many polling stations they can open, which isn't that many, would still happen on Tuesday. That's sort of where things are going right now. We'll see.
Yeah.
Things could still change. The judge could change his mind.
Derek, what do you think? You got less than a week here to make either 200% return if you think they're going to postpone it, or a 50% return if they go ahead as planned. Which is the better bet right now?
If I had to buy a position in this, I'd probably take yes, just because I think things are really going to heat up this weekend as far as statistics on the coronavirus. Mm-hmm. So I think that'll put a lot of pressure. I don't know who it will put pressure on. I don't know if Tony Evers, like Chip said, has the authority to move it. I don't know if he, can do what Adam DeWine did and have his attorney general or his secretary of state. Is it Mike DeWine? Yeah, Mike DeWine. I don't know if he can have the Secretary of State postpone the election in that way. I know Bernie Sanders has been trying to get it postponed, probably because he's going to lose by 30 points. But yeah, I don't see at the moment anybody with the real authority to do anything about it stepping in. But I wonder if, as the sort of casualties mount over the weekend, that there might be kind of a renewed call for that come Monday. So maybe I wouldn't buy at that price, but, if the price does get worse, if it does go down to like 20 or the teens, I might buy some yes just to speculate on some calamity on Monday.
It seems like the kind of thing too, where, as you say, if you get down to even more attractive price, maybe in the 20s, low 20s, you could get in and out just on some news too, even if it doesn't wind up getting postponed.
Right.
If there's some new emergency hearing or the governor even just announces a press conference or something like that, you could see a sudden spike on speculation and get out at a profit there. So you got kind of a couple ways to potentially win by going in.
I think that's how we're all playing it right now is we're just keeping our eyes on the news and, watching Twitter to see if there is any kind of breaking news. And if there is, that's when you buy. But otherwise, you just kind of sit by because, anything can happen in the market like that.
Sure. So what else are you guys looking at? There's obviously a ton of news coming out every day, not only on the virus, but on the economy. We had this just gargantuan new jobless claims data this morning, 6.6 million initial filings following last week's 3.3 million. And seems that even not all the actual data was able to be processed in time. So the true number might even be higher than that. But, last week's was 4 or 5 times the all-time record, and today was double last week's. Whether it's news like that or, campaign buzz, medical news, what are you watching to inform your day-to-day trading? Or are you kind of taking your hand off the wheel at this point and not playing these crazy swings?
You did mention the economic numbers that came out this morning. B of A revising their forecast to where the first 3 quarters are negative. And the middle quarter, I think, is like negative 30 or something. So we do have this market on will the U.S. economy hit 5% positive growth GDP by the year end. I'm a little underwater in that market. I'm buying no because I think all forecasts are going to be revised negatively. And as the summer starts heating up and these numbers start coming in, that there's going to be a panic on those no shares. So I'm in at, I think, 33 cents, and it looks like the last price was 31 cents.
I'm just going to bring it up so our viewers can see. It's so that's, if this is the market you're talking about, it's trading at 69 cents, that it will hit 5%. So you're going on which side of this? I'm
on the no side. I think that as things start to kind of heat up with these numbers, as the unemployment claims come in and as they start revising the forecast down, I think those no shares are probably going to go for a ride. I mean, essentially, you're betting on this recession being the worst recession in U.S. history, which is, a tall order. But I do think that there's going to be a lot of panic and a lot
worth pointing out too, just in case our traders may not be familiar with the way it's reported by the Bureau of Economic Analysis, is that the quarterly rate, which is this is tied to any quarter of growth exceeding 5% this calendar year. So if we, and this is measured on a quarter over quarter basis and then annualized, right? So if you go down 35% in a quarter, but then you bounce back 10% the next quarter, that would trigger a yes here. So it requires that we never hit that. And sometimes after you get a sharp pullback, you get a sharp bounce, but that's what this 69% reflects. And in fact, you can see here, there was some supplemental commentary from Predicted clarifying that, because obviously that was not a huge distinction as of a few weeks ago, but now suddenly you're looking at it, and it's interesting given that we're in such worse economic shape than we were a few weeks ago, and yet the prospect of 5+% growth has exploded, which is very counterintuitive. But again, it's because people foresee the possibility of a really sharp pullback and then some kind of a V-shaped recovery.
Yeah, this is probably not one that I'm going to hold till the conclusion. It's probably one that I'm just really hoping that the media starts to play up the unemployment numbers, and that there's all kinds of panic within these forecasts. So I'm hoping maybe I can sell it around 50 or 60, but it's kind of just a short-term play for how bad I'm anticipating the next couple of months are going to be.
Sure. Yeah, I think that market goes probably yes. If it goes no, that means that we had a second wave in the fall that obliterated any resurgence in Q4, I think, right? And that's like, if you look at the Spanish flu, that's in the cards. So that's basically, I think, what the bet would be on. But yeah, I think the smart money's on yes. But, there's going to be panics.
All right.
So I play no too. I'm flipping now, but it's cheaper to flip now.
Let's take a look at our favorites, the big headline markets, the general election markets. I'm sorry, not only the general election market, but the primary in general. Biden has recovered a couple of cents since we last discussed him a week ago here. He was mid 70s. He's now 80 cents. You see Cuomo is still up there at 9 cents. I know the group quite unanimously, when we discussed before, thought this was a real sucker's bet to go long anyone but Joe, or to short Joe. Any change in your opinion?
No change. I think if Wisconsin does happen and Joe wins it, it's going to be another oh, hey, reality, there you are again moment for the market. If it gets postponed, then we're going to have a whole another 2 months of what if. So
avoid or actually go in long Joe. Is it worth it for the maybe 10 cents you might pick up? For several weeks.
Why not put an offer out at 79 and see where you are on Tuesday?
Right.
That'd be my advice.
Derek, agree?
Yeah, I'm in. I'm underwater, and I have no intention of selling ever. Every day is another day that he's healthy, and another day that this Me Too story hasn't blown up, and it's getting further and further in the rear view. Unless there's some news that I really feel uncomfortable with, that being that there's some rumors that he's sick, or if there's another allegation out there, somebody else comes forward. That's just to, hold it and take the 20 cents in, I guess, August now, not even in July. But yeah, it's not really one that I do a whole lot with. I do a lot of flipping, just penny flipping. But with that one, it's just no, this one's too stupid, to really get involved with in that way.
And then the other big one, of course, is the presidential party winner. This has really not moved much since we spoke, or really since the virus news, became front and center. It's basically a coin flip. It's gone back and forth a bit over the months. Any change in your outlook on this one? Finding either side more attractive?
Yeah, this is one where I just, get scores of shares at the buy price and just set them, a penny higher and collect that way. I don't see any massive movement in either direction for a couple of weeks, if not months. So when a price is static like that, just buy for a cent less, sell for a cent more, and that's really it.
Yep. All right, gentlemen, I have to duck out for another Zoom call, but I'll hand off to Jeff Joseph here.
All right, Jeff.
Thanks for joining us, Jason.
All right, see you guys.
And Jeff, can you hear us? Not sure if we have Jeff with us or not. This is Jeff Joseph from Luckbox Magazine. Hopefully we'll be able to hear from him as well. Looks like he is in the room, but not sure if he can hear or see us yet.
Take it off mute, Jeff.
Say again?
I just said take it off mute for Jeff.
Right. Well, while we're waiting on Jeff, Derek, we've been talking about some of the new markets that Predicted has added, and obviously, while everyone's focused on the virus and the response and the fallout, human and economic fallout, there are some markets that Predicted simply can't add just because of the regulatory restrictions and I guess basic decorum. They're not going to have death markets or even markets on the number of cases and things like that. But within this general sphere of virus-related markets, and I define that fairly broadly, for instance, things like states postponing or canceling primaries, what kind of things that we can't currently trade would you like to see? If you were advising the Predicted New Markets Committee on what they ought to be launching, what would you like to have the opportunity to trade?
Sure. So there are a couple of ways to have these markets that you're kind of alluding to in a more tasteful way. You can't, like you said, bet on people dying. But if you had a market on, for instance, how many Senate vacancies will there be this year? I mean, it's essentially the same thing, but it's not, as distasteful to frame it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was kind of the same thing they had will Kim Jong-un be the premier of North Korea at the end of the year once. And, that was ultimately a market on whether there would be war and whether, he would be killed in that war.
Right.
So, I mean, if we had a question, if we had markets on, whether there will be vacancies, whether there will be, the Senate and the House doing virtual voting, that sort of thing. I think that would be pretty interesting, first of all, because we are kind of betting on the news there. But also, it wouldn't be one of those kind of distasteful markets where you're overtly betting on people.
Yeah. That would be an interesting way to play it. And I want to take just a moment to apologize to viewers. I'm seeing a little bit of glitchiness in our feeds. In fact, I got a warning from Zoom before beginning the market that they're getting kind of crushed with bandwidth. So we shouldn't expect peak performance. So something like they've gone from 10 million active users to 200 million over the course of March. So we are not the only people using this fine app at the moment. But it still appears, unless Jeff, if you can hear me now, that we may not actually have them available to chat with us. Which, if that's the case, we'll just simply bring them back for Quarantine Roundtable 3. So in the meantime, I think that's going to do it for us here on Quarantine Roundtable 2. Derek, thanks so much for joining us again. Thank you to Jason Pipkin for joining us as well. In the meantime, everyone stay safe, stay home, hold your breath for another few weeks. We will, of course, emerge. And when we do, the only thing to match up the pent-up economic activity is going to be the pent-up campaign trail activity. As the nation emerges from its bunker and sings a couple of kumbayas, there will be mud and blame galore to be slung. And, of course, money to be made in these markets. So thank you for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel before you go, and we'll see you next time.